Hey everyone, and welcome to Thoughts on Investing. This past week, from January 5th to the 11th, was a real head-scratcher for the stock market. We had major geopolitical news, some big policy announcements out of the White House, and economic data that was, well, pretty surprising. So let's dive in and unpack how it all played out.
All right, before we get into the thick of it, just the usual quick reminder, this is all for educational purposes. It's not financial advice. You've got to do your own research before making any investment moves. Okay? Great. So this is the big question for the week, right? You've got this foreign crisis that kicks things off, and then a jobs report comes out that, on the surface, looks pretty weak. You'd think that would be a recipe for a down week, but nope. The major indexes didn't just hang in there, they absolutely soared to new record highs. So, how in the world did that happen? Let's dig in and figure it out. Okay, so the week kicked off with a bang, a real geopolitical jolt that sent shockwaves through the markets. And the epicenter of it all? Venezuela.
The big headline was that the U.S. had launched strikes in Venezuela and actually captured President Nicolas Maduro. Now, this is a massive deal on the world stage, a really significant event, and you better believe the market reacted, and it reacted fast.
So, what was the immediate fallout? Well, traders started thinking about oil supply, right? And boom, energy stocks like Exxon and Chevron just took off. But here's the interesting part. It wasn't just energy. The whole market started to rally, which is a pretty powerful signal of investor confidence right at the start of the year.
But even with that rally, if you looked under the hood, investors were kind of split. There were basically two camps. You had one group that pretty much shrugged it off, saying, hey, let's focus on the bigger economic picture. But then you had another group that was way more cautious, seeing this as a serious spike in risk that could mess with everything from oil to bonds.
And this is where things get wild. It's a perfect example of how traders find opportunity in chaos. Get this, Venezuelan government bonds, which everyone thought were basically worthless, suddenly skyrocketed. People were making a huge bet that this political shakeup could actually lead to a financial comeback, making those junk bonds super valuable. Talk about a classic high-risk, high-reward play.
Okay, so while all that drama in Venezuela was unfolding, there was stuff happening back in Washington, D.C. that was also really moving the needle for certain parts of the market.
First up, President Trump rolled out a plan to give the housing market a boost. The idea was pretty simple, actually. The government was going to buy up mortgage bonds. Why? To push mortgage rates down and make it cheaper for people to buy homes. And the market's reaction? Instant. Real estate and home builder stocks just shot up.
And then, out of nowhere, came another surprise. The president, who had been critical in the past, came out and publicly praised the CEO of Intel. Now you might think, it's just a comment, but trust me, in the world of investing, a thumbs up from the president for a huge company like Intel, that's a big, big deal.
So you can see the direct line here, right? The housing plan lit a fire under homebuilder stocks. And that praise for Intel, it didn't just boost Intel stock, it lifted the whole semiconductor industry with it. It's just a great reminder that sometimes pure sentiment can move the market just as much as cold, hard numbers.
All right, so we've got the geopolitical story, we've got the policy story from D.C., but then, midweek, everyone's attention snapped to the big one, the U.S. jobs report. And this is where the story takes a really weird, counterintuitive twist.
The report drops, and the numbers are, well, they're a letdown. Job growth was weaker than all the analysts were expecting. Now, in a normal world, you'd see that and think, okay, the economy might be slowing. Time to sell. But that is not what happened at all.
Instead, what we saw was a classic Wall Street paradox. It's this idea called bad news is good news. And it works like this. When economic data is weak, investors think, this might make the Federal Reserve think twice about raising interest rates. And for the stock market, low interest rates are like rocket fuel. So, weirdly enough, investors saw that bad data as a good thing. And yep, that's exactly how it played out. Instead of tanking, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ actually started climbing right after the report came out. It was a clear bet from investors that this little economic soft patch would keep the Fed from hiking rates, and they absolutely loved it.
Okay, let's pull all this together. We've got a foreign crisis, major policy moves, and a jobs report that made everyone scratch their heads. So let's circle back to that original question. How did all of that lead to record highs?
Well, the answer really seems to boil down to one thing. Just powerful, deep-seated investor optimism. Despite all the scary headlines and the genuine uncertainty, the market's gut reaction was just to buy. That bullish feeling was so strong it just bulldozed right over the risks and sent the Dow to brand new all-time highs. Incredible.
And this wasn't just a handful of stocks pulling everything up.
The rally was broad. You had energy stocks popping because of Venezuela, home builders soaring because of the housing plan, tech rallying on that Intel comment, and on top of that, sectors like aerospace, defense, and even financials were all in on the party. It was a really strong, widespread move.
So what's the big takeaway here? I think it leaves us with a really fascinating question. In a week that was packed with very real risks, the market just shrugged and charged ahead. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When all is said and done, is pure, raw investor optimism the most powerful force in the market?
And that wraps up our look at the week. Hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown and found it useful, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Thanks so much for watching.